a clear pattern emerges. Our results show that despite having similar alcohol levels at the time of offending, 9.9% of Māori offenders received a community-based sentence compared with 3.3% of New Zealand Europeans. We also found Māori offenders are on average younger and more often parents, more often female, and more likely to live in a highly deprived neighbourhood. Our analysis controlled for offence characteristics and a range of demographic and socioeconomic factors, but even after these adjustments, Māori remain twice as likely as New Zealand Europeans to receive a community-based sentence. And the article talks about lasting consequences near the end here, and I won't read it out verbatim, but you talk about a younger person who is just getting started in the workforce. So if you're likely to get a more serious conviction that goes on your record, that might impede your ability to get a job, that might impede your ability to go up the work rank. So there are long-lasting effects from these convictions that Māori are receiving disproportionately to Europeans. Yes?
Correct. I think that's kind of very crucial to keep in mind about conviction and sentencing. So it's not just that you receive it and you just have to pay your fine, or you to have your community sentence and do those hours. It is something that, and I think it's really important to keep in mind, is that it is in your criminal record, and future employer can look into it, and background checks are very common and often done. And even if it's not really immediately related, it sends a signal to future employers, and especially also nowadays where we have a very tight labor market. So we have a lot of applicants for few jobs, and then there's a sorting going on. The employer sees these different applications, and each of these ones give another signal, and it's one signal whether you have a conviction, but it's also a signal when you have these different types of conviction, what type of conviction you and what type of sentence you received, and that might make it even more challenging on the labor market.
When I hear politicians, political commentators, YouTubers, old men on Facebook say things like, "Oh, there's no such thing as privilege. We're all the same. We all get treated the same, and everywhere there's no one starts off behind the eight ball." This, to me, would be an absolutely dictionary definition example of what many people would call white privilege. Because what it seems that you're saying is really the only difference could well be a Māori name and maybe a brown face versus a European face. And if that's the only difference, that means that European face is getting a better outcome, is privileged in this area when it comes to the justice system.
One thing we have to add here is when we look at the district courts and we looked at how things are in different groups of district courts, it is something that we do not see systematically across all district courts. So we have a certain pocket which drives this result. There are a lot of district courts where the differences are much smaller. So the default of a fine is handed out for almost everyone, and we see much less differences across ethnicities. But there are few district courts where and these district courts, they have one thing in common. They provide these more serious sentences, in general more frequent, and then also on top of it more often to Maori, so which kind of creates an even larger gap between those ones. So it is nothing we can say there's a systemic difference across all district courts, so there seems to be more related to specific ones.